When New Orleans Pelicans forward Zion Williamson came into the league, he had generational expectations. He was the biggest high school star we've seen since LeBron, and it wasn't just a popularity contest. He had the game to back up his early fame. He was also a behemoth compared to his high school peers, quite literally being an example of the "looks like a man amongst boys out there" line that we've all heard somebody say. At 6'6", he weighed 285. At that size, you would expect him to have the vertical of Nikola Jokic, but this couldn't be further from the truth. Zion was essentially a flying refrigerator with truly freak-like explosive speed and a vertical jump rivaling any of the other athletes on the court at all times. Combine this with the fact that he was a good dribbler, passer, shooter, and honestly had great basketball IQ at times, and you naturally get somebody expected to take the league by storm. Before he could show the world what he had to offer at the highest level, he still had to go through college. Of course, Zion being an international sensation with skills to back it up made just about every school throw an offer at him. Despite this, I'm sure it wasn't a hard decision to pick the legendary basketball school of Duke out of all the offers, a program that in theory would get him the most ready for the NBA, under the legendary Coach K. When he arrived at Duke, the hype only intensified. He actually set the Duke record for vertical jump before the college season even started, which is just nuts at his size. Once the season started, the hype train kept rolling. He quickly put up great averages, as you can see here. The most crazy part is that his field goal percentage was an impressive 68%, showcasing his efficiency and dominance around the rim. Of course, he remained the top NBA prospect through his college career, but there was one incident that made some people start to question if his game was sustainable. During a game, Zion literally blew the bottom of his shoe out, which led to a mild knee sprain. The injury itself really wasn't that bad, but the incident was the biggest story in sports media for a solid week, and questions started to be raised about if Zion was too big and powerful for his own good. Questions that are still relevant to this day, but we'll get there. Despite the minor injury and an unsuccessful NCAA tournament, Zion was still going first and everybody knew it. You just couldn't pass on this generational freak athlete who seemed to have a level head and be mature beyond his years. Naturally, Zion declared for the NBA draft and did not return to college. And it happened. Zion Williamson was drafted first to the New Orleans Pelicans, and the era of Zion was set to begin. Before Zion could dominate the league though, he ended up receiving a knee bruise in Summer League, which ended up being a torn meniscus after further examination. He now needed surgery, and over half of the season to recover. This is where the "is Zion too fat" discussion really began, but most still had hope. Once Zion came back, he was unfortunately faced with a minutes restriction. Despite this, every time he touched the court, he had a massive impact and proved once and for all that his strategy of being bigger and more explosive than everyone around him could in fact still work in the NBA. Even coming back from a knee injury, he looked even more dominant than a lot of vets, and people started to love and respect this gifted rookie. He even improved at a good rate into his second year, earning an All-Star nod. Things were looking the best they've ever looked for Zion during this early period. Unfortunately, soon after this, the doubters of Zion who were worried about his health may have ended up being right after all. During the offseason going into his third season, Zion suffered a right foot fracture which kept him out for the entire season. At this point, it was starting to look scary for Zion. By the end of that season, he had only played a few more games than he missed for his career total, and the discussion surrounding his health started to become a topic on everybody's mind. Zion's weight was now being talked about in the media every day, and you couldn't follow any NBA-related pages without fat Zion memes popping up. Zion's darkest days had begun. Well, he made it back for next season, his fourth, and actually played pretty well for about 30 games. It wasn't long until he was out for the rest of that season as well. 4 years is definitely more than enough time to get into proper shape, and Zion was starting to run out of excuses for why he couldn't stay on the court. His career was turning from turbulent to sad at this point, and things only ended up getting worse. As Zion entered his 5th season, he was embroiled in a scandal that ended up ruining his personal brand. You see, Zion became involved with a certain adult entertainer, let's call her. which obviously ended terribly. Before Zion knew it, she was literally spamming Twitter with all of his dirty laundry for weeks on end. A funny highlight of this drama is that she claimed that Zion constantly has empty soda bottles in his bathroom. So there was Zion, too fat to play the game of basketball with any amount of longevity, having his secrets being spammed on Twitter by his former girlfriend, and being shit-talked in the media almost every single day. This might have just become his Rocky training arc moment if he wasn't too busy eating burgers. But he just came back into his 5th season averaging numbers that looked similar to his rookie numbers, disappointingly. He did play most of the season, a whole whopping 70 games. When it came time for play-ins and playoffs though, Zion had to sit out once again, when he strained his hamstring, leaving his team high and dry at the worst possible time. It was at this point when people really started to turn on Zion. He seemingly couldn't do anything right from maintaining weight to staying out of scandals. This is currently where Zion stands in the minds of the vast majority. A lazy, good-for-nothing bum who got his big check and essentially stopped trying to be the best basketball player he could be. Whether that's right or wrong is up to you. This offseason though, pictures have come out of Zion looking skinnier than usual. Is it all a trick, or did Zion finally stop slamming sodas while on the toilet?
Some of you might remember this isn't actually the first time that we are seeing skinny off-season pictures of Zion. If they come around again next year, then we're kind of teetering on the point of Ben Simmons jump shot territory. However, unlike old Benny Boy, the off-season pictures from Zion last year actually turned into a 70-game season. Statistically, it may not have been his best season, but after only playing 29 games last year, he could be excused for getting his legs back and settling into his new role again. Which wasn't really made easy with that role forever shifting, with the Pelicans suffering quite a few injuries across the team, aside from Zion thankfully. With the other two co-stars CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram actually missing more games over the season than Zion did. Hopefully going into next year the team is going to be able to find some more stability, but with DeJounte Murray joining the squad, it'll be interesting to see how his arrival impacts this team. Something to look at with a glass half full kind of view is, despite the main three being together for 3 seasons, there's little chemistry between them for DeJounte to mess with. Aside from the picture though, there is still some more proof of hope for Zion and some sort of comeback. Namely his 40-point performance, and I guess what would technically be considered his first postseason game. However, him suffering an injury, checking out of the game, and losing all of his team's momentum wasn't a great end to that performance. But hopefully that is just one of the factors that drove home the importance of health for Zion. Because after all, the Pelicans honestly could have been a decent contender last year if Zion were to have stayed healthy, and with the addition of DeJounte Murray, theoretically that only makes their odds even better. So if there was a time for Zion to lock in, that time would be right about now. Not to mention another $8 million reason why he might be so invested into his health. The exact numbers and details on the contract are a bit wordy, but basically because of Zion's commitment to chugging sodas in the bathroom instead of chugging protein shakes in the weight room, the Pelicans placed stipulations into his contract extension. Zion is going to have to pass 6 different weigh-ins throughout the 2024-25 season. If he's able to pass every single one of those, then he'll have at least 20% of his salary guaranteed for the next season, which again equals to around $8 million. However, if he fails to meet those obligations, then that can also give the Pelicans right to waive him without any financial ramifications. So in a sense, he could quite possibly be working out for his career right now. Whenever the offseason or any hopeful news of Zion comes out, it gets fans excited because they remember the hype surrounding him throughout his high school and college days, still hoping that the player we expected him to be will still someday bounce back. I mean, over the last 2 off seasons, more attention has been spent focusing on Zion's hopeful takeover of the NBA without giving fans a single reason to believe he's capable of doing that, rather than a player who was drafted right behind him and showed on multiple occasions that he has what it takes to lead a team throughout the regular season and into the playoffs. And although Ja Morant definitely isn't bulletproof, I mean indestructible due to his style of play, he at least has shown a willingness to fight back, bounce back from his injuries with more success. Without a doubt, out of the two players, Ja Morant has definitely been the more successful story, but somehow it almost feels like fans completely forget he exists, while simultaneously gassing up a picture of Zion looking skinny like he's about to bust through the doors of Smoothie King Center with a Duke jersey on. By the way, that's gotta be top 2 for the worst names for NBA stadiums, and it's above Crypto.com Arena if that tells you anything. I think expectations need to be tempered when thinking about Zion and what his future in the NBA realistically looks like. As we mentioned, his expectations before entering the league were extremely high, with some people even going as far as comparing him to LeBron James. Well, we're about to enter year 5 of Zion's career, and for LeBron at this point, he was one of the main stars on the 08 Redeem team. As for Zion, he couldn't even make it onto the roster for this year's USA team. So I think it's about time that fans give up the notion that Zion will ever be a consistent All-NBA first team kind of guy. Not to say he's a lost cause by any means, as he's already proven the dominance he can have over a game, but similarly to what we see with a player like Joel Embiid, the size that makes them the player that they are can also be a hindrance to the game that would make them so dominant because of injuries. Long term, it's hard to say the exact path for Zion, but him being as healthy as he was last season, and even healthier if possible, is key to the Pelicans' success. If you made it this far, give the video a like. While you're down there, you might as well just subscribe and let us know in the comments if you actually are buying into Zion's weight transformation or not. And as for that, we'll see you on our next upload.